Alright, what's going on, guys? It's Cam here, and I'm recording the Romeo and Juliet Act 2, Scene 2, I guess you could say summary, I guess you could say that. So, yeah, we're gonna cover this here, and, you know, yeah, so we're gonna get this started here with, basically the setting here. We're gonna start off with some setting here, the setting is basically, this is when Romeo is he's sneaking around, right? He's sneaking around, on the orchard of the Capulet house, and he's sneaking around like a little shadow in the dark, basically, and it's night out after the party. Everyone's gone home. Everyone's getting ready for bed, except a few people on the streets. And everyone's getting ready for bed. And Romeo, like the little sneaky beaver he is, he's out sneaking around in the Capulet orchards, and he basically discovers the Capulet house, and he sees Juliet just sitting there, all lonely and just chilling there and just looking out over the orchard, over the night, over the nice darkness, and yeah, so, you know, it basically takes place outside too, this scene. It's at night outside, she's sitting on the wall, a nice wall there, and, yeah, it's all outside, basically all outside. It's pretty private too, Romeo, I mean, it's pretty private, because it's, it's kind of private and public, a little tiny bit of public, just a little tiny bit, because she is just kind of on the thing there, but nurse can hear her talking sometimes, or calls for her, so I guess you could say it's kind of public, but it's mainly private because no one knows Romeo's there. People know Juliet's there, just chilling on the wall, but no one really cares because she wouldn't think to be up to anything, so. Yeah, so soliloquy versus dialogue. It's dialogue, except it's pretty soliloquy at the start, because Romeo is just talking to himself about, oh, it's my lady, it's my love, just sitting there on the wall, or standing there by the wall, leaning over the orchard, and yeah. But then it goes to dialogue later on in the scene, once they start talking, to each other, and Romeo basically announces his presence to Juliet, and then they start a nice lovey-dovey conversation, and yeah. It's pretty social, social confrontation. Pretty social, yeah. You know, it's pretty social because they're talking to each other, and even though they're talking to themselves at the first part of the scene, they go on to talking to themselves, basically. Well, not to themselves, to each other is for a better word. And it's not really political because they're not talking about politics and the government and all that jazz, and it's not religious either because they're not talking about Christianity or Catholics, so you couldn't really say it's religious. So they're pretty much social. It's pretty social. They're just talking back and forth, just having a good old conversation. Um, I'd say it's a pretty positive conversation. Pretty positive because they're talking to each other, and it's not like they're being rude to each other, they're being nice, sweet talking to each other, just moving the conversation along, and pretty positive stuff. They're talking about getting married and all happy days maybe, but then it kind of goes to negative for a little tiny bit again because they're talking about, like, how their two families don't get along, and they basically want to kill on each other. So they basically want to kill each other, the two families, and they can't now because the prince forbid it. And so that was kind of negative because they said the families would hate it, and it wouldn't work out. But it goes back to positive, just making out and stuff after that, and the light of the dawn comes, and light of dawn, and that forces Romeo to pack his bags and take a hike back to wherever he came from. Hold on here. Yeah, so it's a pretty long scene, really. Um, it's pretty, yeah, it's definitely a long scene. You know, really long. You know, we got about a half a page on 33, and then we got another 2 full pages, and then another page, and then about a little tiny, about like an eighth of a page or something. Thanks, Miss Niblock, for giving me probably the longest scene. Thank you for that. You know, the longest scene. I really would have much preferred a shorter scene, but you know, whatever. Just put it back here. Yeah, definitely a long scene. Definitely just basically Romeo and Juliet talking. And yeah, so it's basically lovers and family, basically, and enemies, because there's 2 lovers, Romeo and Juliet, and they come from 2 different families. Romeo comes from the Montague family, and Juliet comes from the Capulet family. But now those 2 families are enemies. Neither of them are friends. Nothing's friends in this situation. It's all like, we're gonna kill your family, you know, hacking and slashing. We're gonna take your family down. You know, so yeah, there's definitely no friends in this situation. It's lovers, and then the families that don't get along because they're enemies. So, and yeah, that's basically that. And then, so, yeah. So we got, it's obviously in private, covered that. Action is, there's definitely, some action going on there, because, uh, there's definitely some action, because, like, you know, how they make out at the end and stuff, right? That's, I guess, you know, they're just getting it on. They're just getting it on. That classifies as action, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, see, you know, my buddy here, he's not working with me, Chris, you know. Yeah, I don't have the recording equipment, so thanks to him for letting me use this recording equipment. So yeah, so basically, yeah, action. You know, he's not working with me, but he'd agree with me, just bringing another person in on the opinion, just like a ask the audience type thing. So, yeah. And then, I would say this is basically family versus family. You couldn't say it's anyone versus anyone. I'd say it's family versus family, and then there's 2 people that love each other. You couldn't really say it's men versus women or anything. Pretty much family versus family. There's no men and women versing each other. Can't really say that. It's pretty, I guess you could say, it's not really a comical scene, but it's not tragic either. It's kind of just like a, you know, a chill moment, you know, the mood's being set there with the nice, you know, making out and stuff, and, you know, the mood's being set, you know, it's kind of just chill, and, you know, it just makes you feel all good inside, and, yeah, I wouldn't say there's any blank verse in this at all. You know, there's really no rhyme or anything like that going on. So, you know, you can't really say that any of that's going down. Uh, I'd say it's more prose. I'm not sure if that's how you say that word at all, but it might be. Probably is. It's basically more prose than blank verse, because there's really no rhyme or anything that goes in the blank verse. There's more, you know, stuff like, hold on here. There's more, it's more ordinary form. It's not even like ordinary form language per se. It's not like ordinary form language, because it's like, it's more Shakespeare's own language, I would say. Because, like, I mean, you can't really say that it's spoken in ordinary form. Like, if you look at the book, if you were to look at the book, but soft what light through yonder window breaks. That's not ordinary language or ordinary form. It's really it's really not like ordinary language, but it's more prose and blank verse though, I'd say, because it's definitely a lot closer. I think Shakespeare. We're gonna move on to how does this compare to the previous scene. That's what we're moving on to. That's a new topic of discussion. Uh, that's the new topic of discussion. I think Shakespeare has made these choices. He's made these choices to continue on to the next scene because it just makes sense, really. It really just makes sense to continue on to the next scene with the same kind of language he's using. It doesn't make sense to make it more like grade 6 language. It doesn't really make sense to do that. He just continues on, basically the same thing. It just keeps the ball rolling. Basically, he doesn't like change too much up. He doesn't really change too much up. And the benefit of this is that it's not really like, okay, now we're here, now we're there, and now we're there, and it's like, okay, where am I? Like, in some books you read, and it's like, all right, so just reading along here, and then, oh my, what are we doing over there? And yeah, so basically he's just continuing on nice and smooth, and nothing like just shoots out of nowhere and just surprises you. It's just all basically the same thing and a few shocks here in the story, and it's a very well written story. I think he's done a good job of that story. His next scene, I think his choices will be to basically just keep it rolling, not change like too much, just keep the same kind of words he's using, the same kind of language and form, not like too like normal, like not so people like not so that people are like, oh man, this is really easy reading, because obviously story, you couldn't really say it's an easy reading because he's using basically his own language, and you couldn't really say that it's changed that way throughout the book. It's basically all the same. So yeah, and yeah, so he's probably just going to keep it rolling the same way, and then just keep the scene moving, or keep the next scene moving, on with, I think it starts with, who does it start with here? Good old Friar. Friar Lawrence with his basket. That's the great way to start a scene. I couldn't find a better way to start a new scene. But after moving that on, I think we can know what we can describe the two characters in the scene. And by the way, there's only two characters in the scene. Only two. Only two. Romeo and Juliet, just as the book names itself. So that's pretty basic, if you ask me. Pretty long scene though, but two basic characters, the main ones. I'd say there's multiple words I can describe them as, more like a couple. But I think they're both protagonists, because they're both the main part of the story, and they're not really bad guys. Like, they're not bad guys. Like, Juliet's not a bad guy, and Romeo's not a bad guy either. So, it's just kind of like they're both protagonists, but you could also say they're both catalysts, because they both kind of make the story happen. If you didn't have one of these characters, well, they'd be settled with some other person. So you couldn't. They're both catalysts because they both make it happen. You can't make the story happen. You couldn't just have Romeo and Rosaline, because it would be just boring. There'd be nothing to write about it except two angry, pissed off families. So basically, that's all it is. They're both protagonists, but they're also both catalysts. That's what I say. That's basically it. Or, like, you couldn't have Juliet and whoever she likes, that County Paris guy. I mean, she doesn't even love him anyway, so odds are they'd just be pissed off the rest of their life, So, yeah. Well, that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching my, I guess you could say podcast on, Romeo and Juliet, Act 2, Scene 2. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you another day.